proposed to do this in a way that provides a lot of flexibility, but we're going to ask public comments on how people think this should be done. I think the notion here is that by having some bio-based only procurements, that in order to bid on it, you've actually got to include bio-based products in your response.
The trick really is, and this is something we've been doing a lot of work on, there's a training on our website right now, and on ag learning training. The trick is to increase federal purchasing to make sure that contract language that goes out there, because the government buys lots and lots of services, and that's how we would buy the bulk of our bio-based product as part of that service. But to make sure that in that contract, there's the appropriate bio-based language in there saying that you get this contract, you're going to use bio-based products in the completion of the contract. So if you get that in there, we think that'll stimulate. And yesterday we were hearing also that there's some folks out there in the interior, for instance, there's some direct buys. We're not doing a real good job of tracking that, because that's something it's been very difficult to get a handle on. You use a credit card, go in and buy a product, it's not really reported. Our service also does some of that, but when they're out fighting fires, they use a credit card, go in to Walmart or whatnot, they get what they've got to get. And so the violation must go on. Again, how do we report that? And that's one thing we'd like to look into going further than that. So, Andy?
Just, if anybody asking a question, we'd appreciate it if you'd identify yourself and who you're with. Appreciate that.
I'm Sue Ann Pickle with the Goodman Association, also a consultant to USB. I think the difference on this language, as it was explained in Parliament, is to have a procurement that instead of just a clause that says, use these bio-based products for this if they're available, this would be, you can only bid on this with bio-based products. That's it. You can't fulfill this contract with anything else. And that was trying to get at this question of specifications and availability. Sometimes when the clauses are in, the feedback is, well, we tried, we couldn't find the product. Or we did, but then they didn't meet the final specifications. So this approach was to try to deal with finding them and making sure the contract was written so they meet the specifications.
So does it kind of negate the exceptions of price, performance, and availability?
That's in the implementation.
I'm not identifying myself.
Right.
I got in, I'm grandfathered before he said that.
The next one.
A person working to train procurement people in a large federal something. I'm trying to define that.
Oh.
I don't think this language negates those other things. I think the way to work our way through the tension between those two requirements is to set up a system whereby federal agencies designate these bio-based only procurements in areas where we know the products are available, in areas where we know that they'll perform right, and in areas where we know that they're cost competitive. And there are a number of industry segments where I think that's generally recognized as true. And I think what Sue Ann was hinting at is that in certain federal circles, people are very accustomed to their old habits and will use those exceptions as excuses not to do what the law says. And if we're prudent and judicial about picking out the bio-based only procurements, we'll eliminate the easy out, so to speak.
Great opinion on the people corporation. I'm just a lack, I'm a politician or an executive or anything. But I'm looking at this and thinking if I wanted to do a really innovative project, it's probably going to take me about a year and a half to do that. And by then, it's almost 2016 and new elections. So my question to you is, how vulnerable is this to a change in the political climate?
The company I used to work for had a CEO, and on his wall was a little plaque that said, "No man's life or property is safe while the legislature is in session." So, I mean, if I could foresee the future, I'd be in a different line line of business. But it seems unlikely that this would change. You may have noticed that Congress over the last several years has had a hard time passing a lot of bills, and to the extent that that continues, the ability to change something with a change in political climate is not automatic or easy. And so I would think that same inertia that makes it difficult to get legislation passed these days will help keep this in place.
Let me take it one step further. This is a 5-year farm bill, and even if there were to be change, you're probably not going to address it in 4.5 years. But I just don't see it happening with all the other things they got going on the Hill to single out this or some remedial legislation if there's a change. The Senate and the House stays the same. I don't see it. I worked on the Hill for 5 years. I was a lobbyist a good part of my life. Money, thank goodness. Got to make money somewhere. But I just don't see it.
David Bingham from Cargill. Are there, or do you envision any consequences for agencies not considering bio-based or BioPreferred? Just, I mean, to be direct, we've been told by several agencies straight up that regarding BioPreferred, we don't do that here. So, just is there any language?
I think that there are some gentle reminders that can be made to happen. First of all, I would encourage anybody who's having that kind of problem to please contact Ron or myself. When this has come up in the past, and we have a strong partnership with the Office of Management and Budget. The presidential memo from 2 years ago has requested agencies to pay more attention to the statute and has set up some ways to make the performance more visible through the sustainability scorecards that each of the agencies gets twice a year. And in instances in the past when we've had this happen, agencies have seemingly flaunted the law. We've gotten some help from the Office of Management Budget and some of the folks there who are strong advocates. One's in the audience, she'll sit on one of our panels later. Between them and the budget examiner for that agency, they've been able to usually have some meeting of the minds and some gentle persuasion to make the right thing happen.
So Kathleen Merrigan, GW, but former Deputy Secretary of Agriculture, and I know that businesses in the audience are, desperately want the federal government to stand tall and do what the law says in quick time. But I do have to remind everybody about the timeline. I was going to the President's Management Council, which is the group of deputy secretaries, the CEOs essentially of all the major departments in the federal government. You guys can remind me, I think it was 2011, that I was probably making the pitch among these chief operating officers about bio-based, and they're like, bio what? That was just 2011, right? So there's, it takes some time to get everything in place. And if you come down really, really hard, that is when you possibly could get legislative pushback. Right now it's an opportunity, there are mechanisms to apply pressure, and so I think given how few years this has been remarkable growth. So I know that's not satisfying if you have a great product and it's not being procured by the federal government, but I would say rather than the hammer, figure out ways to showcase your products. Today's a great example. Make sure people who care about this, like Deputy Secretary Martin, knows that you're having a problem with a particular federal government agency. I think that would be the softer way that I go about it.
But again, please do contact us, because when this has happened in the past, we've, again, tried to apply some gentle persuasion and had pretty good results. Just to amplify what Dr. Merrigan was saying, the federal government has to jump through a lot of hoops before they can sign a contract to buy things or get services done. There's a tome called the Federal Acquisition Regulation that is, thousands of pages long that has literally hundreds of requirements that have to be met, of which the bio-based requirements in the Farm Bill are one. And we have people who are working in this area who gotta try to keep hundreds of things, hundreds of requirements in mind when they're doing their jobs, of which we're one. And so again, we try to work really hard to make people aware and hope they will keep that in mind. But if they don't, we'll try to find ways to remind them.
And one of the other things we do is just on an ongoing basis, and we'll be training the EPA here very, very shortly. We go agency by agency. We used to be able to go to the GSA Expo and GSA Smart Pay, and actually be doing a GSA Smart Pay training later this year. But that's going to be via the web as opposed to the in-person meetings. Those are pretty much gone by the by. But we'll be going agency by agency. Anybody who's from a federal agency wants us to come and talk about the program, train your procurement people, talk to your guys, we'll be there. Particularly if it's in D.C.
We do buy bio, and bio standards are used for our energy and requirements manual for construction. And I would like for you to do a webinar for us, if you would. So,
Love it. And you've got Shane Love there who used to be in this position, and so Shane understands too.
the issue that we've been finding is a dichotomy, if you will, between federal procurement, preference procurement designated products and certified products. Some are both, some are one or the other. And we've been wanting to do a particular product meeting our requirements when it's certified, but it's not designated. And there is a product that is otherwise designated, for example, on EPA's comprehensive procurement guidelines that we are required to buy. So how do you go with that?
If you're not required to buy it, not on a list, that doesn't mean you can't buy it. You
No,
shouldn't
I
buy it.
know, but if it's required by EPA on its CPG list, and that is what we have to buy, or everything else we equal.
Comprehensive procurement guidelines, yeah. There is a disconnect here. The other disconnect is at VA, and we've had some discussions on this, and I'm not sure where this is going to come down, is that there's been a pushback for some flooring that's made in Europe, it's bio-based. And the particular company has been coming to us and saying they're pushing back, they're saying it's buy American, if it's only made in America, it's not made in America, we're not going to buy it. Well, we're not making that particular product in America at this point. It's not like, I'm not sure what the solution is. We've had discussions, and I'm not sure what's going to come down.
Alan Snipes with Crosspoint Solutions. What is the designation of complex assembly products?
For example, we might designate categories of furniture like chairs that because they have multiple components, they might have fabric, upholstery, they might have foam underneath, they might have wood or metal frames. Up until now, we haven't designated those because there's not been a comfortable way to determine the bio-based content. Whenever we designate a category of bio-based products for mandatory federal procurement, we always designate a minimum bio-based content for that. And the laboratory test involves taking a small sample and putting it in an oven. And the ovens aren't big enough to handle the chair or some of these other products that have multiple components. We test the individual components. Our rule, which we hope will be promulgated this fall or late this summer, will have a formula for calculating the overall bio-based content of the entire product based on the bio-based contents of the testable components.
And the intermediates, was the rest of that question. We've been, at this point, labeling intermediates, but we've not yet designated intermediates. Those are chemical building blocks, and that'll also be done going forward this year.
Take one more question? Yeah, two more questions.
She hasn't had her question.
Amy Sorrell with Biobase Technologies. How would you designate the complex assemblies based on innovation with the maximum amount of bio content? And who would I have customers reach out to if they had an innovative bio-based complex product and want to make sure that designation, say it's only 7%, but that's the best anybody can do? How would they get that labeled in the program if it's a newer product?
I'm going to not answer that fully because we have a panel this afternoon, which you will participate in, that will talk just about that whole process. So if you'll allow me to defer that, we will. Maybe you're shilling for our panel this afternoon. Well done.
All right, I guess I have to identify myself. Beth Martin, I'm with the Army's Public Health Command. This relates a little bit to her question. When you say items are tested for their bio-based content, do you have affiliated laboratories that do that regionally? Or, I mean, I've never, I always hear about testing, but I don't know how that works. So, I mean, I only need the 10-second answer, but.
Under our labeling program, where each of the products to be labeled has to be tested, there are, I think, 2 or 3 laboratories that have been certified for our labeling program as being compliant with a number of International Standard Organization standards and ASTM standards. When you apply for one of your products to be labeled, it's handled in a way that'll direct the testing to one of those certified labs.
Okay.
And when we've done for the designation process, we'll also use one of those labs when we're doing the testing.
Thank you.